Welcome to NCIX Tech Tips. Today's episode is about the Vesta 3190, and the whole point of this computer is using only premium brands, that is Asus Corsair and NCIX PC, but achieving a piggy bank friendly price point. Now, to hit the $999 price point, we did have to go with the value components from Asus and Corsair. However, the thing about value components when they're from Corsair and Asus is that they tend to deliver pretty good value. We're starting with the case. We've got the 300R from Corsair. I mean, you're going to hear that a lot, from Corsair or from Asus. At the front, you find a pretty standard overall layout. So you got your power button, your reset button, your front audio jacks, as well as front USB 3. We've also got an Asus DVD writer in the front. And then as we go down the front, you're going to see that we've also got a nice filtered intake here that has dual 120mm fan mounts behind it, although by default, only one 120mm fan is installed. Now, airflow for those fans is going to be ample because not only do you have the front mesh that we looked at a second ago, but there are also side grills on either side that are going to give tons of airflow free flowing to those front fans. On the side of the case, we find two more fan mounts for 120 or 140 millimeters. These are over the graphics card area, and they can even cover the entire length of big graphics cards running in Crossfire or SLI. A recommended configuration for this, if you got a couple beefy cards in there, might be to have this one as an intake and this one as an exhaust, depending on where the fan is positioned on your graphics card. If we go around to the other side, we find it's a pretty plain sort of, black metal side panel, nothing really exceptional over there. But on the top, we find more magic. So you've got a ton of different fan mounting options on the top as well. Dual 120mm or dual 140mm fans will mount with no issues. And what's cool about the way they position them, you see the 120mm fan mounts are a little bit off to the left. And the reason for that is it gives you enough room to get past the motherboard, any interference from the VRMs or the RAM slots, with a dual 120mm water cooling radiator. So you'll either use two 140s for air cooling or dual 120s with a radiator to get a little bit more space there. In terms of I/O at the back, it's pretty standard fare for a Z77 motherboard. You've got four USB 2.0 ports, a PS2 port, HDMI, DVI, and VGA out, optical audio out, two USB 3.0 ports, although remember, there were two more on the front, gigabit Ethernet, as well as just plain, it's 5.1 out, however, then you can't use the microphone, so pretty much, your two-channel audio out. Video out is covered by the video card, so you got mini HDMI as well as two DVI ports, and finally, your power in. There's also a 120mm cooling fan at the back. Now let's take a look at the internals. Now, to hit that price point, there were some compromises made that personally I wouldn't really like for my own machine. I would prefer to have an unlocked processor. So we did go with a 3470. That is still a quad core, it's still an i5, it's still a very decent machine.
It was so
very decent core to have for your gaming machine. But if you want to overclock, that's not going to be the answer for you. The other thing is that I would love to have added an SSD for the boot drive. At least a 120 gig SSD makes a huge difference to the overall snappiness of the machine, but the Western Digital 1TB blue drive can handle boot drive and storage duties. It's a good compromise between the black and the green level drives. Everything else in here is pretty good, actually. We've got a Corsair A50 cooler, which is enough for overclocking if we did upgrade to a K-series processor. 8 gigs of Corsair Vengeance color-coordinated RAM. So we got blue RAM to go with our blue board. We went with the LX level P8 Z77 board from Asus. And the reason for that is the LX level board does include support for SLI and Crossfire X, which is great if you feel like doubling up the graphics cards. We've got an Asus DVD burner as well as an Asus GTX 560. This is a non-TI. Once again, to get in at the price points we wanted, we did have to go with that one. However, this is an aftermarket cooled one that has two fat heat pipes coming out of it to make sure that it does run nice and cool. With all the ventilation in this case as well, it's a very cool running machine. For the power supply, we went with the CX 500 from Corsair. If you do go with two graphics cards, I'd probably recommend stepping that up to a TX series and maybe a little bit higher wattage, but for the configuration that you've got here right now, there's no issues that you're going to run into. Now, while this might not be the machine for the super hardcore FPS gamers with triple surround monitors and all that kind of stuff, this is the perfect setup for someone who wants to play the latest MMO games or the slightly less than top tier graphically demanding titles now and even tomorrow, because there's not much in terms of games that are going to push the envelope that's on the horizon, at least for the rest of 2012. So you buy something now that you know works, and you're going to know it's going to work for a while. Speaking of MMOs, probably a good companion set for this particular machine would be a K90 and an M90, which we also have here today. And I think that pretty much covers it. So thank you for checking out our episode about the Vesta 3190. I was totally cheating. I forgot what it was called. And don't forget to subscribe to NCIX Tech Tips, and also don't forget to subscribe to the NCIX newsletter so you can see these newsletters about NCIX Tech Tips. So you can subscribe to everything. Ah!